welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode number 70. And the title of this episode is The Financial Collapse is Going to Hit Like a Tidal Wave. And a lot of stuff is happening today, and I'll explain why later on, why I think it's going to hit like a tidal wave. But the Fed did come out with its minutes, and it's funny when the Fed was coming out with the information, the market kind of reacted all over the place today, and to me, that shows one thing. I mean, the Fed is coming out saying that they want to, scale back, taper off, whatever you want to call it, the amount of money printing. And it's funny when they say that, the market took a dive. And to me, this feels like it's a test, and it's like what the Fed is doing is saying, let's see how the market reacts if we say this. Let's see how the market reacts if I say that. And if QE is removed right now, the market will completely collapse. That is the only thing that's keeping it afloat right now. And just from the news, you can tell that the market is so fragile right now. And I know I keep saying this, but again, it's a disconnect from the real economy, but people look at this as it is the economy. I was speaking with someone today, and he asked me, how do I think the economy's doing? I said, well, I think it's doing poorly. I said, if you look at unemployment, unemployment's very high. And then he said, but I see unemployment isn't around 8%. I go, yeah, but did you know that they changed the calculation on how they calculate unemployment? If you use the old calculation, it's around 22, 23%. And he was, shocked and couldn't believe what I was saying and had no clue that this happened. And I'm going to tell you right now, most of the people have no clue. They have no idea what's happening. They have no idea that these things have been manipulated. All they see, he just said, yeah, but the stock market's up. But that's all anyone is looking at. It's the perfect illusion. It's like the perfect magic trick. When a magician has the sleight of hand and you're looking in one area and he's doing something else, like putting the quarter in his pocket? This is what the stock market is. Everyone's looking at the stock market while everything else over to the right is going on and nobody notices it. And, this is just unbelievable. But it looks like Bok Kim says the world may face rate risk if U.S. exits from QE. Now, even they're saying if U.S. exits from QE, basically that's it. The whole thing comes tumbling down. Japan, boom, it comes tumbling down. And that's pretty much it. And basically, like I said before, the Fed is stuck. And I know Peter Schiff says this a lot. It's basically like a drug addict, continually taking drugs, feeling better. But, you need more drugs to even feel more, much more better. And eventually, to kick the habit, you have to go cold turkey. The same thing that's happening here is they are continually feeding the system with this money printing, and eventually they either have to go cold turkey and stop it or continue printing. But if they taper back, it won't matter because the markets won't be satisfied and they'll start falling. And then people will get nervous, and then people will start selling. Institutional investors will start selling, and then boom, before you know it, we have a complete collapse. If he continually prints, we have what's called a bubble in the stock market, in the housing sector, in the treasury bond sector, and those pop, and we have the same problem. Basically, in the minutes, which pretty much sums up that there is a bubble, I mean, they don't come out and say it, just like they said in 2008, the subprime problem is contained. Now, contained for who? The American people? No. contained for them so they don't get hurt. Same thing here. He goes on to say a few participants expressed concern that conditions in certain U.S. financial markets were becoming too buoyant. One participant cautioned that the emergence of financial imbalances could prove difficult for regulators to identify and address, and that that it would be appropriate to adjust monetary policy to help guard against risks to financial stability. Basically, it's a lot of mumbo jumbo. Basically, they're saying we have a bubble and we need to do something about these bubbles, and it's becoming risky, and they know this, and this is why they want to scale back or do something else, but they're kind of stuck, and they're trying to figure out what they're going to do. Now, in regards to this, and on the People, someone wrote something very interesting, and I'm going to read it because I thought it made a lot of sense. And basically, it goes on to say, and you can go on to the People, and it's under the economic collapse poll, and it says, we just got the confirmation today from the Fed minutes. The Stock Act was done so the Senate and reps can't go to jail for this. Ben will tell them when he's going to pull the rug out. The record number of short sales, talking over $2 trillion US dollars. He ran the market up. He'll tell the banks and elected officials he's going to pull the rug, and bam, we are left holding worthless paper. A $2 trillion short is like a $5 trillion profit. They are selling now. They'll buy back in for margin at the drop rate. Why else was everyone else selling into the rise? They don't have the Stock Act to hide behind. 10-year bond broke 2% for the first time in years today on the news. Interest rate rise equals default and bond failure. Gold edged higher at the same time. These are inverse indicators. This is setting up for this year. If we make it to 2014, it's only because the rug is tossed back under the bus. A 2% drop could initiate a flash crash. Depends on volume of single trades, and margin calls on these high shorts could easily do it. So this goes along with other things that I've been hearing today, and there's an article in Market Watch saying that they feel around August, September, we're going to have some type of stock market crash. And it's funny because the debt ceiling has been pushed off until September. And I'm hearing a lot of reports coming in saying that, August, September is the time frame. And, we'll have to see. But, it's starting to look this way. Now, the other interesting thing is that they pushed off the debt ceiling. They suspended it. And basically, I'm going to read this. The Treasury Department once again is taking federal retirement programs to buy the government more time to increase the nation's debt ceiling. And why does the government need to raise the debt ceiling? The debt ceiling must be raised for two reasons. In order to fund the banker-inspired wars of occupation, to continue to fund the largest wealth transfer in history, the bailouts. And just who is behind this nonsense? The very close friends of Goldman Sachs over at Citigroup, and they have their henchmen in charge of the continuing rape of American by Wall Street, Treasury Secretary Jack Lew. And it goes on to say, last Friday, Lew announced that government was taking the unprecedented action of avoiding governmental default through this summer by including tapping into and suspending investments into the Civil Service Retirement and Disability Fund and halting the daily reinvestment of the government securities, G Fund, the most stable offering in the thrift savings plan portfolio. We have long heard that bankers that have hijacked the government would commence stealing our private wealth through the pension funds, and this is exactly what the chief bankster Jack Lew is implementing. The next step will be to seize bank accounts like they did in Cyprus, and then step up the MERS mortgage fraud as the Federal Reserve continues to purchase $40 billion in mortgage-backed securities. By the way, the G Fund is invested in interest-bearing Treasury securities that make up the public debt. The Civil Service Retirement Fund finances benefit payments under the Civil Service Retirement System and the Basic Retirement Annuity of the Federal Employees Retirement System. So it looks like they are already moving to take the pensions from government workers, and these government workers who think that their pensions are theirs, they are not. And we are seeing this happen more and more often, and we really have to keep our eyes open, because there are certain signs as we get closer to the economic collapse, which I'll go through it at the end of the report. But let's move on now. It's funny. Cuomo to state sheriff, shut up about gun law or risk termination. Now, basically, you have a bunch of state sheriffs opposing a law because it's in violation of the Second Amendment. And Cuomo tells them to shut up or risk termination. What does that tell you? That tells you he knows he's wrong. He knows what's coming. He knows why they're doing this. Again, those states that have a huge debt problem and a huge population and are very close to defaulting have these draconian laws in place to take people's rights away and to take people's guns away, weapons, because they know when the default comes and the collapse happens, they need to be in control and keep control of the people. Now, there was another article that came out that said, Red Alert, Obama administration to sign UN arms treaty. So basically I said this, and Obama is ready to sign this UN arms treaty, which is in complete violation of the Second Amendment. And it looks like what they're saying is the treaty is expected to be signed by the Obama administration by June 3rd of this year. And once this treaty is signed, it's going to set up a domino effect for gun control, even worse than what Dianne Feinstein was proposing. And if they can't get it the way they want it, they'll bring in an event to push it along. And this is how they do it. Just look at our history. When they told us, the income tax will only be on the wealthy. Now it's to the middle class. Now it's everybody. We'll only need the bailouts this one time. Just this extra one time. Wait, we need all of it. We need more. It's the same thing. They push in with a little law or something small, saying, no, we're not taking away your rights. Don't worry about it. They move a little bit more. They move a little bit more. And before you know it, it's a complete law, and your guns are being taken away, or your rights are being taken away. And this is how they do it. They do it very slow and very quietly, so people don't notice until it's too late. And basically, back in Germany during the Nazi wartime, that's what they did. Laws happened very quietly and slowly, and before you knew it, no one knew what was happening. Okay, let's move in. I read this interesting article that U.S. to boost military manhunt capabilities with RFID satellites, and we heard of the RFID chips, and they're looking to track. I just think this is ridiculous anyhow, but the way they're making it out, that we're going to track potential enemies. Now I'm thinking, this is the most ludicrous thing. We're going to track and eventually annihilate potential enemies. Now, they have to get the RFID tags on them somehow. They're not just going to take them and say, here, hold on, let me put this in my pocket, and now you can track me. I'm thinking they're going to use this on the people of the world to track them, either by putting this device into all electronics or implanting it into us and have the satellites up in space, and they can track They know the whereabouts. They know everything about you. And that's where I think it's going. I don't think this is. I think they're using it as a cover-up to track potential enemies. Because they'll. It makes no sense what they're saying here. But anyhow, let's move on. Now, there was a report coming out that Chinese hackers who breached Google gain access to the sensitive data, U.S. officials say. And Chinese hackers who breached Google servers several years ago gained access to sensitive data with years' worth of information about U.S. surveillance targets, according to current and former government officials. And you can see right here is they're setting up cyber attacks, they're setting up war, they're setting everything up. And what I find very interesting is that they always seem to mention things about, infrastructure, energy, power grids, that kind of stuff. And I'm reading through the article and I see, the U.S. government has been concerned about Chinese hacking since at least the early 2000s, when network intrusions were discovered at U.S. energy labs and defense contractors. The FBI has for years led a national security investigation to Chinese cyber espionage, some of which have been linked to the Chinese military. And they always have to bring it in somehow, some way, letting you know that, that they can get into the government, they can get into the energy areas, and they're just building this case up for this cyber attack. That's all I see from this. But, you can read it the way you want to read it, but I'm seeing things that they're just continually building up the propaganda. So people continually hear cyber attack, and when one hits, they told us about this, cyber, that this country's doing it, now we have to go to war. Okay, let's move on here. Now, I think it's very funny that, the IRS, who is going after Tea Party constitutional groups and other organizations, now need their constitutional rights, like hiding behind the Fifth Amendment. It's amazing when people need the rights, they use them. And they're the ones who basically wanted to take them away. And it's funny because the rights are there, not because the government gave them to us, because we are born with them. It's our rights. It's not a privilege. It's the people's rights. And they're trying to turn it to make it like these rights are privileges. No, they are not. These are our rights. They cannot be taken away. They cannot be removed or altered or anything like that. Now, there was an FBI agent in a fatal shooting of a suspect in Orlando that had ties to the Boston bombers. And I find this very strange that the FBI went over at midnight to question this person. Think about it. You're in your house or your hotel or your friends, and there's a knock at the door at midnight to question you. Don't you find that odd? I do. And you're trying to tell me they went over to question and the FBI had to shoot the person? I think they went over there because this person knew something, and that the FBI needed to keep this person quiet because it would have raised questions about what really happened in the Boston bombing, and that's why this person is now dead. Now, basically, there was an article in MarketWatch saying Bernanke out by August, QE ends, rates up, crash. Now, I said before that we will be able to see and find out how close we are to an economic collapse. I believe this. We will be able to tell, and we know we are moving closer because of all the laws that are passed that take away our rights. Now, when they create more laws and take away more rights, we're getting closer. If they start doing bail-ins or stealing from the pensions, we are getting closer, and we can see them doing that already, which I already mentioned. When they implement more taxes on the people and they keep giving us taxes, 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 because they're trying to raise money, we are coming closer to the collapse. When people are reporting more troops on the ground, seeing more DHS agents, seeing laws that give the Pentagon, the military, um, access and by law to put boots on the ground within America without, with with no authorization, we know we're getting closer to the collapse. When we see more military exercises, like flying around in the cities, shooting, when we see them riding in trucks, shooting, we know we're getting closer to the economic collapse. When we see the bail-ins and them freezing the bank accounts, we know we're getting closer to the economic collapse. When they implement more false flags to get bills passed or to get us into war or to declare martial law, we are getting closer to the economic collapse. So when you see all of these things continually happening, and when I say continually happening, I mean a ramp up of these things, we are getting very, very close. And if you look back, back 2008, you didn't see much happening. QE1 happened, not much. Then they came out with the NDAA. Then they came out with the Miranda, the exception to the Miranda law. Then they came out in December with the FDIC Bank of England bail-in document. Then we saw it happen in Cyprus. These, now they're going to raid the government pension funds. They want to put an online tax so they can tax everybody. Scandals are breaking out with IRS, Benghazi. They're keeping wiretaps inside the Congress and in news agencies. We are getting closer, and when you see all of these things start to really ramp up, and all of a sudden one day it's, a false flag happens and the gun bill gets passed or the UN Arms Treaty gets signed into law, this is how you know we're getting closer and closer, because the states themselves who are close to default collapse with huge populations, and that's New Jersey, Connecticut, Maryland, California, Chicago, Illinois area, all those areas, this is how you know, because they're passing laws like crazy to get the guns away from the people. Like, look at California. Tax on ammunition, all of a sudden, tax on ammunition and a microstamp on bullets. New York already did it with $500. Tell someone, let us know if you think that gun's illegal, and then we'll start the investigation. If you see something, say something. The cops can frisk you without anything. They'll just frisk you first, ask questions later. These are the things, this is how you know we are getting closer. And from the reports that are coming out, especially with the recent report from Christine Hugh, and that is in the Sentinel Alerts. It's a video, and you should really listen to it because she goes into it saying that Japan is going to collapse first, especially when the Fed stops, printing money. Japan's going to get hit first, and then it's going to trickle all the way throughout Europe and into the United States. And we have many other financial people saying the same exact thing. Some of them are even saying that it's going to happen very soon. I was actually shocked on Market Watch that they actually said something in August and September for a crash. So listen, things are ramping up. When this financial economic collapse hits, it is going to be boom. One day everything's fine, boom. The next day it isn't. And everyone's going to be staring at each other, wondering what the hell happened. And this is when we're going to see many things happen, maybe even before this. I mean, if you see, let's put it this way, if you see and hear like a lot of cyber attacks happening in a specific area and blackouts start happening in different areas because of these cyber attacks, or if they have a cyber attack and it siphons off money from a bank, you know it's beginning. That is going to be the sign, like, because what I said is this cyber attack that they're building up for is a perfect storm. It's perfect in the way they can implement martial law. They can hit the power grid, and again, I said in 2003, I believe the East Coast power outage was a test to see if they could do it, and they can. And they will plunge everyone into darkness. They will siphon the money off from the banks. They will blame whatever country they want to blame, China, North Korea, Iran, Syria, doesn't really matter. We will enter into a war. Now, just because you don't see the full cyber attack doesn't mean that that isn't the start. I mean, if you see the cyber attacks on banks and the new comes out in the news and they're saying that banks are being hit, money's being siphoned off, that is another sign that is coming, and it's coming quickly. But each day when we do these reports, we will look into the news. I mean, already we see that they're going after the pensions. There's also reports coming out saying that they're going to, taper off with QE, and other reports saying that we could have a crash in August, September, and we see other reports coming out saying that Japan is teetering on collapse, and if Japan goes, then everything else goes. And we see in Japan, Bakim is saying that if the Fed stops QE, that's the end. It's a complete collapse. So we can see certain things happening, and we need to keep an eye out on this, and we need to make sure we recognize all the signs and everything that's going on. And again, we need to be prepared and ready, because I personally believe that we're going to see certain things happen sooner than later. Listen, everyone, thank you very much. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.